Hello, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. Thanks for waiting. We're going to bring our friends in over from Twitch, and then we are on our way. So that's the show we record for posterity's sake. So just hang on one second there, gang. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. We're here with Twitch and stream simultaneously, both of them together. It's a modern day miracle. I hope everybody's doing well. It's a little dark in here. Let me just see if I can brighten that up a little bit. Yeah, there you go. I hope everybody's doing just fine. So here we are. Had a bit of a problem. Had to delay yesterday. I don't know. It was about 3 weeks ago, I guess, something like that. Went to bed fine. Woke up. There's a super sharp, really localized pain at the very top of my left incisor here. Really hurt. And it hurt for about 2 or 3 days. Eventually it just died down. I didn't think anything of it. And then I was at a restaurant last Saturday and was taking a bite out of a delicious chicken wing. Not like I was eating an apple or something. And the tooth, she just fell out. So apparently, during one of my many nightmares and stress examples, I did something during the course of the night where I previously had bitten down hard enough to actually crack the root of the incisor. These are crowns and have been since about 10 years ago. So it was basically broken. It was just waiting for the right chicken wing to come along to actually fall out. So I had an emergency repair done, and that wasn't working so great. So anyway, 2 days ago, I've got a terrific dentist, and I didn't feel a thing at the time. But for those of you who are into this kind of horror, gore kind of movie thing, since this tooth root had snapped right there at the base, I still had the root of the tooth still in my jaw. So he had to do a root canal. Again, I didn't feel any of it at the time. And then he had to take a metal post and kind of screw it in there. And then he had to cement that to the top of this crown here and cram them together. And I think he used super glue or Elmer's or something, whatever. It's working really well. So I'm doing fine. But yesterday, my mouth just hurt like the devil. So that's why we had to push back till Friday, which is today. It's the 20th of October. We have some good news on the website front after some initial bad news on the website front. Found somebody online who had, 35 5-star ratings and real reasonable price. So we got started. I let her know what the requirements were, what we were looking for. Main thing was that the members wouldn't have to do anything. They'd just be able to show up and it would just be the new site. So I thought, great. And then 10 hours later or something, 5 hours later, I went to post the episode for that night. I thought, oh man, the formatting's all screwed up. What's going on here? And I found out to my dismay that she was working on the live site in real time, which is not what I expected. I expected that there would be a parallel server and that I'd be able to watch the progress there, make notes, and then beta test it and make sure everything's working, and then just jump it over to billwhittle.com, which is what we ended up doing. But for about 48 hours there, I was just, wasn't exactly. I've learned to be less apoplectic about things. But in any event, just when I thought things were like completely on the, on the kibosh there, I just, she said, just give me 1 more hour. I've been working on this all night. So then finally I saw the mock-up website, and it's actually really pretty fantastic. It's just a modern website. It's so overdue. And I think it's really, really, really going to look good. So I am doing all of that, as well as the other things I have to do. So I'm going to make this announcement just one time. And if you're watching this, if you're not watching this live, please, this doesn't apply to you. If you are watching it live, the first 50 people that click in with this we're going to ask to request that they beta test the new site before we put it up. Just go in there and play around with it. I don't know if that'll be the stuff that you do there will be kept or not, but we definitely want to get a beta test on it before we roll it out, almost like we're a real company. So if you want to be one of those people, we're going to take the first 50. I don't know if we'll get that many. If we get more than that, we'll stop at the first 50. And if you want to be a part of this, you need to send an email to info@billwhittle.com, and then don't bother putting anything in the text, just in the header. In the header alone, just put beta test. That's it. info@billwhittle.com, beta test, no text. Send that baby in. We're going to collate the first 50 names we get. When we're ready to go, we will email those 50 people, and we'll have a link where we can find out what you think and how it's working and stuff. I don't know exactly when this is going to happen. It might be something that we do in a couple stages. So we might send an email saying, "Hey, we're beta testing just the general functionality," and then another, but not the forum or whatever. Then or we may all do it all in one. I don't know. But in any event, if you want to be a part of that, if you're watching this recorded, it's already too late. We don't want to flood the system. So if you're watching it live, that's what we'd love. And some people said they've already sent it. So last time it's info@billwhittle.com. The header should just say beta test, and that's all. And then no text, and we'll just put those emails together and we'll send it out to you. And you can bang it around, see what you think. It looks really cool. And while I was in the middle of like, oh my God, lightning is struck again here. What the heck, what do I have to do to get this right? That was 15, 20 hours there when I didn't hear anything. But I gave her that extra hour, and then I went and looked at it, and it is, I think, well, it's not like a groundbreaking 3D holographic website. It's just a real good looking modern website. A lot of scrolling down and all the pictures and all the rest of it. So there you go. Beta testing. Beta test is fine. We got AI that can figure that out. So that's that. This is Thursday, our political show night, obviously. So we're working on that. The rest of the script is still, frankly, script still chugging along. Once that have to stay here all night for 3 days, pressure came off. I just took a day or two just to catch up on my sleep. So I don't know if you've ever felt this way. Maybe you feel this way all the time. I have been feeling this way a lot, certainly for the last 5 years, and especially the last couple months. It'd be great. Wasn't there a Twilight Zone episode called A Kind of a Stopwatch, I think, where you could click it and it would just freeze time? I would like to have one of those just so I could catch up. You ever feel that way? I would just like everything else in the world just to stop, just for a day or two or 3, whatever. And then I would spend those 3 days and everything out there has just stopped. All the deadlines have stopped. All the incoming stuff has stopped. Everything just stopped. No more bills, nothing. Just boom, stop. And then it's like, that'll give me a chance to catch up on my emails, to catch up on this other stuff. Just catch up. I don't want to rob any banks. I don't want to, conquer the universe or anything. Just a 48-hour period would probably be enough. 48 hours where nothing else is happening and I can just catch up. But as it turns out, that doesn't exist. Yeah, just don't break the watch. From First Time Chat, that's a great line. I hate that I can't read these things. Hang on, sorry, I beg your pardon. I would rather put on the glasses than get it wrong. That was from Frosty October. Well, I hope you're having a frosty October. And Lord Bio says, what if you stopped everything but everyone knew what you did while they were paused? Well, I don't know. This is the level of, I don't go that deep, Lord Bios. It's beyond my mental capacity. I just go with the, wouldn't it be nice kind of thing. Anyway, I'm real pleased with what I've seen so far, and I'm looking forward to getting that thing up and going. We've also got coming soon sections built into the new website for spoiler alert and for Major Mace Mattingly. I gave both of those ideas to my friend Buster O'Connor, who's just a terrific graphic designer. I've been working with him for 30 years now, I guess. Buster's the guy that designed the Bill Whittle logo with the hands in the pockets. He's just fantastic. He did the Stratosphere Studio stuff. He's just really great. And I asked him to do a work on these two things. And he came up with an idea that I liked very, very much. For spoiler alert, it would involve a name change. But I just like the idea. He was suggesting that we call it script mechanic or the script mechanic. and that we would use all of these like industrial things, like in like the movie Metropolis, with big levers, and gears, and just take this extremely creative, ephemeral kind of process, and the iconography for it would be just like cast iron freaking rollers, and and brass rotating pins, and just these gigantic huge levers. It's like, yeah, we're gonna, it's a script, did I say script mechanic? Story mechanic. Story mechanic. And then I guess I could be the story mechanic. I like the sound of it. And I like the look of it. So there we go. So there's that. We should have those, I'm hoping within a week or two for those 2 shows. We'll put in temporary slugs. Until then, we'll get that website up as fast as we can. Yeah, kind of a steampunk look, as Lysolis says. I always like to go with AOC because I'm not so bad at names and stuff. Little changes yet again. Yeah, shocked. Well, we keep changing, we keep adapting, we keep moving. We're kind of light on our feet here. We're like the little mammals that are moving through the toes of the dinosaurs, kind of thing. Anyway, so that's that. So I'm hoping to have that new look next week, and we will send out that email as soon as we feel comfortable, and we may do it once or twice, but in any event, thank you very much. So I guess we'll probably just more or less jump into the questions, because I was very bad with them on the last couple of shows. I was trying to think if there's anything on the political front. I am going to, we're going to have an archive section where all the firewalls will live, and I'll dig up all of my copies of whatever firewalls and afterburners I have, upload them, and put them in the archives. I've probably got 30 of them, I guess. So that's something I could do when I have the stopwatch stopped. I am thinking, however, that what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to turn things to come into something like Moving Back to America. It's going to be just like a commentary slot. But unlike Moving Back to America, which was live, this is going to be basically going to be sit-down firewalls. That's what they'll be. They'll be exactly like firewalls, except I'll be sitting here talking to the camera, and I'm going to concentrate on that fourth turning theory, because I got a tremendous response back from that email, a tremendous financial response from all of you who made donations. We're very, very grateful. We had a number of members sign up, had a problem with the membership going through on the old site, which is why we did the new site. When we get the first of the script mechanic done, story mechanic stuff done, we're getting close to being the end of October when John Voight will be back, so we should be seeing that in about 10 days, I guess. And when we get that up and going, then we're going to do another big membership drive. But it occurred to me that it's probably a good idea to do the fix the website part before the drive a lot of members in part, because I'm just learning slowly over the course of 60 years or so that sometimes it matters what order you put this stuff in. So everything is starting to look really, really exciting. The thing about the things to come thing is, I'm just going to keep that as a theme. There are so many different things that are in there that I think each one of them, has its own segment. The destruction of language, from, this tremendous vocabulary to my vocabulary to, LOL, IMHO, SMH, to emoticons. Now we got a language of 5 pictures. You got happy face, sad face, frowning face, that's it. That alone is a things to come thing. So I'm actually thinking that's what I'll do. I'll just consider this a new brand, like Firewall and like Afterburner. Virtually everybody who said they saw the previous things to come, which was a sort of an overview, said they're fine with me just sitting here talking to the camera. So that seems to work. So I guess we'll be doing that. Anyway, hang on, I got to get this. Sad Wings Raging says, put Bill on the Astronomicon Golden Throne. He would make a great guiding light. Thank you. Although I must point out, in the interest of accuracy, that the Golden Throne and the Astronomicon are separated by some distance in the Imperial Palace. I just didn't want anybody getting the wrong impression about that. I do love my 40K, and I wish they'd do something cool with that, but I have low expectations. They took the GW, I think Games Workshop, took down a lot of the fan-made 40K stuff. They started, 40K TV, which I think just collapsed within 10 days or something. And if they're smart, they'll do what I would like to do, which is not clamp it down, open it up. Open it up. You want everybody making as many 40K movies as you can. There's some talented people out there. They'll make some great ones. And even the people that aren't very talented, you're still spreading the brand. I just don't get it. It's not like they're taking money from you. So anyway, as Sad Wings Raging says, the Emperor protects. So with those encouraging words, let's just get on with the questions here. So go to what I hope will be the old website, which would be nice if it was still there. I'll go to Firefox for this. Hang on a sec. I imagine we'll have some questions about Israel and Palestine, and it's a bit of a story. Hamas, I mean. I just saw a headline on YouTube. It says apparently a story from one of the survivors of the Supernova music festival. He said it was like an animal slaughter, like a abattoir, just everybody just marching in a line. And I'm sure we'll get the chance to talk about that. So let's see here. Hang on. Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's the most insane thing. Oh, okay. So that's why somebody was saying we got problems with our forum. I told them as a requirement that everything that we did had to be preserved. So anyway, Roadrunner set up a temporary Stratosphere Lounge questions. I'm sorry about this. As I said, my instructions and my intention, which was not heeded, was that all of this would happen completely parallel, and then this new site would just come online. And when I found out that she was working on this thing live, I really kind of lost my marbles there for a second. So let's see. Roadrunner, we do have some questions. You said, Bill, did you manage to submit your screenplay? No, not yet. Since I'm no longer on the get it in there, is it 120 pages? Yes, then get it in there. I just got an extended deadline. They're all everybody in Daily Wire is over in Europe shooting Pendragon cycle until January, so it's not like they're nipping at my heels. I did get a link for episode 8 of An Empire of Terror, which is the last episode, so I'll do notes on that, and then I get to see, I think, episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 reviews, because I've already done one set of note on those. So I asked them if they have an opening date yet. They said they don't have a specific date, but they're pretty sure it's November. We're damn near November. So hopefully that'll do it. Let's see, Steve Young. Having had the great personal fortune to have attended British public school, you may not have read the fiction short story A Man Without a Country. I didn't in British schools, but I did when I came to Key Biscayne Elementary. As I watch public demonstrations against America being led by American politicians who have sworn an oath of service to our nation, I wish for them the same treatment. Life imprisonment at sea with never a mention of their homeland. And here's a link to a story. For those of you who don't know it, it's an essay. It's a great little short story, I suppose I should say, called A Man Without a Country. And I did get it when I was 5th or 6th grade when I came from Bermuda to Key Biscayne Elementary School. And it takes place right after the Revolutionary War, if I remember correctly. And as an American trader, and what he's sentenced to is, he's not exiled, he's sentenced to living on board a ship. And he's not allowed within sight of America. He's not allowed to go anywhere else either. So he goes out there, and basically, you know, when he's going one way or another, he trades from one ship to another, and he just never gets to see anything other than the country. He doesn't get to see anything of the country that he just sold out. And he's a man without a country, and it's pretty brutal. So the deeper question, of course, is what do you do about these people who, you know, just plain... You know, I'd have more respect for Joe Biden. You could put anything after that. I'd have more respect for Joe Biden if change anything, and I'm sure I'd have more respect for him than I do now, because I have zero respect for him. I don't think he can go into negative numbers. But if he was an actual Chinese spy, I'd respect him more than just a guy who took money from China for his 10%. You know what I mean? I'd at least that'd be something I could relate to. Okay, he's a spy, or he has ideological reasons that he's kept his whole life for supporting China, or whatever the case may be. I'm much more able to understand that than I am just like, no, just money from wherever. Ukraine 10% for the big guy, China 10% for the big guy. What you got? What you got? Russia? Yeah, we'll take 10% for the big guy. Eric Blake says, hi, treason used to have a certain sort of punishment. And I'll tell you something, guys, when that kind of punishment returns for treason, what you're going to see is a lot less treason. And I'm talking mostly about things like information leaks. You know, my favorite Cold War, What We Saw episode was, I think it was episode 9, Cloaks and Daggers. It's about this exact topic. And that's where we talked about the U.S. inventing the U-2, the U.S. inventing the A-12, which became the SR-71, picking up the submarine off the bottom of the ocean with Project Azorian, billions and billions and billions of dollars, not to mention, what was the name of that? Silver Bells, Operation Silver Bells, I think it was, where we tapped into Russian transcontinental cable, where, you know, we just went out in the middle of the Atlantic and sent some guys down there and tapped into the international cable lines and got to listen to all their conversations. So the signal intelligence we're great at. And then all of this stuff I say, and then the Soviets by far got the biggest intelligence haul of the entire Cold War, because they paid Walker something like, $250,000 over the course of his 10-year career. Ivy Bells, thank you. So we do all these amazing things, and then we can't lock the door against a guy who needed 10 grand, for his failing nightclub or something. But Walker and his little circle went to prison for the rest of their lives. Okay. Lady Hawk says Walker should have been shot. Yeah, he should have been shot. And he should have been shot on primetime TV. That's, it's the same thing. If you don't punish people for the crime, then there are going to be more people doing the crime. And treason has the ultimate price, because it's the ultimate murder. I mean, what Walker did significantly, seriously endangered the lives of 200 million Americans, almost 300 million at the time, I guess. And he just didn't care. So you, sir, can get off of my planet. I can talk some more about some of these ideas for things to come if they don't come up in the comments, because I had not realized that the forum was deactivated while we do this. So yet another one of those, Stratosphere Lounge quality launches, but that was certainly not my instructions. So we'll move on. We'll see what we got here. We got a few. We'll get through those pretty quickly, I think. Maybe go to Facebook or something. So from David Newland, hey Bill, I stumbled across a YouTube video recently that gave me pause. The video cited a Pew Research study released in February, noting that 63% of American males between 18 and 29 were single. I thought I was unable to verify the angle of the video, which claimed that these 63% were visual. I missed something there. Hang on. Noting that 63% of American males between 18 and 29 were single. Though I was unable to verify the angle of the video, maybe that's the age or whatever, which claimed that these 63% were single voluntarily. I found numerous news articles from that time which had similar takes, one putting the total percentage of U.S. singles not interested in dating at 57%. While I can't disagree with your premise that the existential crisis of the fourth turning is the lawful versus the lawless, I believe the implications of this Pew Research study are indicative of an existential crisis on their own. What say you, Hail Vectron? Yeah, so that's a worldwide, oh, Hail Vectron. It's a worldwide problem in the West. And it's a problem that that China's going to be facing, is starting to face this. They're going to have a population collapse as a result of their one-child policy. We're starting to see the beginning of that. But a number of Muslim communities, or Algerians in Sweden or whatever, will simply say out loud, openly every day, oh, we're just going to outbreed you. You white people are going away, and we're not. We're having 12 kids per family, and you're having a dog, and that is a genuine issue. Now, it's an issue that could be solved if we were to change our immigration policy. I want to say it was Ted Kennedy who basically took the immigration quotas or preferences from Northern Europe and basically said, no, you can come here from anywhere other than Northern Europe. And if you look at the top 10 immigrant countries to the U.S. in the 1960s or 70s even, I guess, maybe even into the 80s, it's honestly, it's like Britain, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, that kind of thing. Last time I checked, for the 2010s, I think it was, might have been the 2020s, the top 10 are, they're honestly like Colombia, Belize, Mauritania, all of these third world countries. That's not to say that people from the third world can't be good Americans, but it does mean to say that they're not starting out culturally as good Americans. They are not from the Jeffersonian school. All of the fundamental values that the United States was built on are essentially Judeo-Christian values that have been passed down through Northern Europeans in general, I guess. When you stop that and start bringing in, when you legally turn that aspect of immigration off in order to get people, and nothing but people whose social backgrounds have nothing to do with the social mechanisms that they're moving into, you're not only going to have a problem with the maintaining those social mechanisms in your host country, you're actually going to create a great deal of social friction. And honestly, the part of it I cannot understand. It's like the Biden give me 10%, whatever it takes. Yeah, I'll sell America down the river, just 10% of whatever. I can't understand that. By happy or weird coincidence, just before I hit the record button on the show, I was listening to a segment Mark Dice was doing, and he had some video of the Prime Minister, I think, of Scotland, or the head minister of Scotland. I don't know if they have their own Prime Minister. They're not fully independent. But the head political guy in Scotland. And he was giving a speech. Pakistani fellow, I want to say. And he's saying, with a real perfect Scottish accent, because he grew up in Scotland. With this Scottish accent, he's saying, so this is the problem that we face in Scotland, I mean, just look at my portfolio. My banker is white. My bank tellers are all white. The Minister of Finance is white. He just goes bam, 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 just rattling them off. This horrible thing is just look at all these white people that I have to deal with, basically. And this is kind of where the problem is, Nobody else in the world, I think, feels that way. I've said it before. I'll say it again because it just seems to me to be just fundamental human decency and politeness. If I were to move to India, well, let's say Pakistan. Let's say I were to move to Pakistan and I were to arrive in Pakistan, I would not expect the Pakistanis to change their culture for me. I would not expect them to speak English, although I'm lucky in the sense that English has become essentially the international language. It's the language to speak that's most likely to get you a response in other countries, but I wouldn't feel like it was the Pakistanis' problem to make sure that everybody spoke English so I was comfortable. If I managed to get elected into Pakistani politics and then were to go through there, stand up in parliament and talk about what a horrible country Pakistan was because there were so many Pakistanis in the government, well, first of all, they'd have the common sense to throw me out. And secondly, what kind of a person would I be? And that is exactly why you have to start asking questions like this about that Scottish minister in particular and immigrants, the new wave of immigrants in general. What kind of people go into somebody else's country and expect their country to change to meet their convenience? Who thinks that way? I can't understand it. That's telling me that is something, a little wrong. Now, I have to take exception here with somebody who's a capital geek said citizenship needs to be a multi-generational process. I'm going to have to disagree with that one. My wife, Natasha, is an American citizen, and she's an extremely fine and patriotic American citizen. But her attitude towards America and citizenry is very different than the immigrants that are steaming across the border, very different than the immigrant policy that this guy in Pakistan was advocating. Natasha loves this country, considers it a privilege to be here, but more importantly, we spent 6 years and significant amount of money going through the steps of proving it. So the first step is you have to show immigration when you apply for your provisional green card, your provisional resident alien card. You have to wait 6 months. You have to be in the country 6 months before you can even apply. And then when you apply, you have to go down to an immigration officer, and you have to bring a series of photographs, airline tickets, bills, anything you can find to prove that you are actually living together if you want to get the citizenship through marriage thing. And they ask you some questions about it. This is how they try to get away from, people pay $15,000, pretend to live with some guy, and next thing you know, they get citizenship. So that was a real scare. I mean, what if the guy had said no? But as usual, when we just sailed through that. I might point out that Natasha got her tax ID number well before she got her work permit through the resident alien program. So that 6 months we went into it, we got the provisional green card. I forget how long we had to wait for the full green card. I want to say it was another year or two. And then she got her permanent green card, which means that she cannot be thrown out of the country. This is her home. She can stay here. She cannot be denied entry into the country, but she's still not a U.S. citizen. So then you have to wait a year. It's not like how quick they can get to you. You can't even apply for citizenship until, this is out of memory, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I don't think it's a year or 2 years after you get your resident alien card, then you can apply for U.S. citizenship. And when you apply, you have to wait, and your application is approved, and then you go in, you take a test, which I think every single one of you could pass, no problem. But if you were to take it to the general population, especially city populations or blue states, I don't think they'd pass the citizenship test for the country. In fact, I know some people would fail it with a 0. You have to get 6 out of 10 questions right. We were studying until Natasha got 100 out of 100 right. There were a total 100 questions. They pulled any random 10 for her particular test. And it wasn't me. I said, honey, you're ready. You at the worst, you might miss one of them. She says, no. So we waited until we got 100 out of 100 reliably. Then she went down, passed the written test. And then she had what I think was the first open air group citizenship swearing in since COVID. I believe it was the first day that people weren't being sworn in behind a glass pane with masks on their face. So that was awesome. And so there you go. So as far as the birth rate goes, that's a potential solution. There's, of course, a much deeper issue here, and that deeper issue is, why aren't young people getting married, and in fact, not just not getting married, but their entire dating and personal relationship things just falling apart. And that's a much deeper issue. That's an entire segment, an entire episode of things to come. There's a lot of things at play here. I think before I get to the cultural things, I really do think testosterone levels are just falling dramatically every year. And we are also eating more healthy than any other generation and getting much fatter. So there's no question in my mind that there's an overwhelming abundance of evidence that the stuff that we're putting in our bodies is different than what it was in the 1960s and 70s, let's say. I've mentioned Star Trek before, but you just look at Star Trek. Kirk was known as being heavy because, he was gaining weight, but he's still slim heavy. Spock and McCoy are thin, and they're in their middle age, easily. Everybody on that show is thin. There's not a person there with a gut at all. Now you look on the flight decks of aircraft carriers and policemen and so on, and they're just huge. They're gigantic. Something is going into our food that wasn't there before. I know a significant amount of it is this high fructose corn syrup that they're putting into everything. That's making us fat. And I'm beginning to believe there's a real solid case to be made for bottled water, the plastics in containers, either containing or promoting estrogen. I forget which one it is. But I've been hearing that for a long, long time. And I'm looking for another explanation. You can have cultural reasons why people don't want to go out on dates or have sexual relations in their teens or 20s, but it better be a damn good one, because that's generally not what you're wired to do. But something is different, and it's different in Japan, and it's different in Sweden, and it's different all across the West. It's not different in the third world. So we always have some bright people here. Capital Geek says it's phytoestrogens in plastics, processed food, and then reverse osmosis, which is a filtering method, is not rated to remove MTBE, which I assume is a estrogen related thing. Soybeans, all of this stuff. So on one level, David, to answer your question about marriage rates and birth rates and stuff, on some level we are either intentionally or unintentionally ingesting a great deal of stuff that we didn't ingest before, and that is knocking male testosterone levels way down. I can feel mine way down. And at the same time, we live in a world where the technology is everywhere, so we don't get nearly as much exercise. That doesn't help. And on top of that, there are additives that are injected into, I want to say, these aren't mystery additives, they're just basically sugar. I guess it makes it taste better. But when somebody told me that there was high fructose corn syrup injected into steaks, I just said, that can't be. Turns out, apparently it is. Thank you very much, Kaladin Stockley, with a $10 super chat. That's very nice of you. Appreciate it. So there's that, and Steve Whoop says not enough sleep. So there are biological factors, and those are the outlines of the biological factors. And I don't know whether they're more important or not, but there are certainly also a great deal of psychological and sociological factors at work. I think one of the big ones is, I think this is a transition factor. I don't think this is the main thing now, but I think it got us to where we are. The feminist movement somehow managed to convince women that the only way to really be a woman is to be a first-class bitch, and also to be able to do everything that a man does better than a man does. That is the unwritten script here. If you're going to be a girl boss, you're going to be, you can't be a female boss. You've got to behave just like a man, and you've got to, try and use all of those aggressive techniques and all of that, toxic masculinity, and so masculinity and male behavior was essentially criminalized, not legally but sociologically, became criminal to do the things that men do. And it starts real early. They start working on you real early. It's been proven fact for a long, long time that if you have a group of 20 kids in a classroom, 10 boys and 10 girls, the boys are going to be looking out the window more than the girls are. And if you put them all on the floor with nice cushions and carpets down, because we want to get anybody bruises or any other kind of potential damage, but if you put in relatively young infants in a room, 10 boys and 10 girls, generally what happens is the girls cluster together and are interacting with each other facing inward, and the boys are running around on the outside looking outward. That makes sense from an evolutionary point of view and a survival point of view. But we've been through 20 years, 30 years now of saying to young boys, why are you looking out the window? Why don't you share more? Why are you so selfish? Why are you so aggressive? Why do you want to do things for yourself? Why are you always using things as a weapon? Why are you so independent? Why are you so prone to do dangerous things? Why are you so adventurous? All of this stuff. And it's treated like, boys are treated like they're defective girls. And they've been treated that way for the longest time. And so the boys basically shut up and just put their heads down. And they've been doing that for 20 years. So that's a part of it. I think a significant and probably the single dominant issue, I would bet the single dominant issue in terms of the low marriage rate and couple rate and so on, by far is the accessibility, the ease, and the volume of internet porn. When I was a young boy, if you found a dirty magazine like a Playboy or something underneath the bushes someplace, that was like, holy cow, we gotta treat this like it's the lost ark, and so everything was just, it's like any other experience. The more you're exposed to anything, the less you value it. If you went down if it was your job to lead tours down the Grand Canyon in a raft, you would not have the same sense of enjoyment that the people if you've done that for 10 years and you're on your 301st trip, the people who are on their first trip are having a better experience than you are because it's new. And so what the porn does is it makes the physical release of that male mating urge piece of cake. It desensitizes men to that, but mostly it gives you completely unrealistic standards, unrealistic expectations, and it redefines essentially what the relationship between the sexes are. Now, the damage that it does to men is significant, but the real harm here in society, by far, is the slutification of the American girl. That, to me, is the number one issue. There's no other word for it. I think the dictionary has got it exactly right. It's the slutification of American girls. A society can afford to have men step outside the boundaries. That's why we have males. I'll just go through this again because I know it's clear for everybody, but for those of you who may be new to the show, if you had an island and you wanted to repopulate that island and you could put 100 people on it, the most effective way to repopulate that island would be to pick 99 women and one male who's in good physical condition. You might think it'd be 50-50, but it's not. That's not how it works. Biology doesn't work that way. You want 99 women and one male, and he'd be a busy male. But I'm sure you could find volunteers, like George C. Scott, for example. So that's the biology of it. That's the mechanics of it. And what that means is that nature can afford to experiment with males. There's a lot of evidence for this. For example, IQ curves, when they compare averaged and weighted IQ curves for men and women, they found something very interesting. They found out that men are stupider than women, and they're also smarter than women. How does that happen? Well, our bell curve is a little bit longer and wider than the female bell curve. We have the stupidest people in the world are males, and the smartest people in the world are males. And that's just another example of nature being able to experiment with males. You know, fortunately, I still have a significant amount of this left in me, but certainly not as much as I did before. When I think about how the kind of flying I did when I started, or how I drove when I was 16 years old, this male sense of invulnerability, and I'm going to live forever, you know, wingsuit. I'm not saying that women don't do it, but I am saying that I never see women starting it, and that the women I do see doing these kind of high-risk things are usually 5-10% maybe. And that's because men are wired to be able to be adventurous, because we're wired to think we're immortal, because nature can afford to lose males. It's that simple. The reproductive strategy of any species is predicated on producing as many offsprings as possible. That's how RK works and all the rest of it. So nature says, since if I had 100 people, I'd need 1 male and 99 females. If you have 50 males and 50 females, that essentially means you got 49 surplus males there. There's 49 males that you can mess around with and lose. And that's why males do all of these insane, crazy things. Like, you know, look at this. Hold my beer, watch this. Jackass, which I really admire. I admire those guys enormously. Is inconceivable of 10 or 12 women doing it. It's inconceivable. That's a male thing to do. And when males watch it, they feel, I don't know. First of all, they like it, they laugh, but there's a kind of vindication. I admire Johnny Knoxville enormously, because Johnny Knoxville understands that pain and injury are a part of life, and that there are some things more important than that, and one of them's having a blast. And so he goes out there and gets all these bones broken. But you can't imagine 7 women doing Jackass. You can't imagine a woke remake of Jackass featuring 7 women, but you can never imagine them starting off that way. So all of this stuff is all tied together. But the main problem is that the current generation of sexually active young females have grown up believing that they can be just as slutty as the men are, and they end up being much sluttier as a general rule than the men. It's really, really, really worrisome. And what I'm seeing a lot of on these body cam footages and things like that, I'm not just seeing Gen Z reacting like 4-year-olds because they've never been in trouble before, they've never been told no before. They not only throw temper tantrums, they're shaking with fear. Call my mom, somebody please call my dad. No, we're not going to call you. Please call my dad before you put me in the car. That's Gen Z as a general rule. But the women, the young women, they have these women are 20, 21 years old, they got a body count of 50. And they've been told, "Good for you, go girl. You're a bad bitch. Congratulations, you've slept with 50 guys. You're 20 years old." And then when they find out that nobody wants to marry them rather than just, hook up with them, they're mystified. They don't know why. They honestly don't know why. What is the name of that interview show? That guy is great. He does this interview with 1 or 2 guys. He got a whole panel of these women, young women, and he just is very calm with them. I've forgotten his name. It's gotten hugely popular. It'll show up here in just a second. He's really terrific. The Whatever interview, yeah. So you look at these Whatever interviews, and he's got him and usually 1 or 2 males, and then he's got like a panoply of 7 or 8 just regular off-the-street modern Gen Z young women. And you look at these young women, and they're all dressed like hookers, basically, and they sit there, and I look at them, and I think, honestly, I don't think they have 100 IQ combined. I really don't. They don't know how to do anything. They're just plain objects, because they've been told that. That's how they've been treated. And they've been given everything they want, and they think that this is basically it. And women are starting to get older now with the feminism wave behind us. You're starting to run into women who are in their mid to early to mid, well, they're in their 30s, getting into their 40s. They're calling it hitting the wall. They're rapidly running out of time to have kids. They've got, yes, congratulations, you're the manager of your own company and you have Mercedes-Benz and you have a $400,000 condominium and all the rest of it. But as Kevin Samuelson would say directly to their faces, and watch their faces because he liked to slap people around a little bit psychologically, these women would list, well, why do you think that you're not able to find a husband instead of a hookup? Well, and the woman says, well, I don't know. I mean, I've got a great job. I make a ton of money. I'm making mid six figures. I've got a graduate degree. I own my own business. Blah blah blah. And she lists all of these things, and then he just looks at her and he says, "Yeah, we don't care about any of that. That doesn't make any difference to us at all. We're not interested in that." He's right. We're not. We're not. That doesn't interest us. What interests us is, can I count on you? Are you loyal? Are you pretty? Are you friendly? Is coming home a nice experience, or is it just an extension of the stress that I've had to deal with all day? Women used to know how to deal with that, and it's a simplified way of putting it, but I happen to think it's actually an extremely accurate way of putting it. The conservative model of marriage is the woman takes care of the man and the man takes care of everything else. That actually works pretty well. There are some limitations on it, you know. You got to be strong for the women. You got to try and hold that back and put on a brave face and all the rest of it. But you expect to come home to something pleasant, and these women are not pleasant. They're far from pleasant. I understand how easy it is to knock down a generality, but generalizations are truisms, and just because you can find exceptions to them doesn't mean that it's not true as a general rule for whatever you're generalizing about. I don't think that women are emotionally wired for these super high stress, very, very aggressive, Wall Street, stockbroker kind of lives. I just think it's too stressful. I don't know of anybody. Women are more emotional than men are, or at least they should be. And so that means, there are various differences. And to pretend that there aren't is what we've been doing for the last 50 years, and that's why we're getting a Road Rider just beat me to it. But this is what the Karen phenomenon is, right? There was no such thing as Karens before the pandemic, really. You could always find grouchy women and stuff, but the Karen behavior is relatively new. And it's relatively new because you're getting these women who have just plain snapped. And they've snapped because they don't have a male to lean on and to take care of this stuff. And so since I can't talk to my husband about it, I want to talk to the manager. That's basically how it works. And then they get extraordinarily possessive and territorial and things, and I will get my way, and I'm not doing this, and you will give me my receipt, and I demanded this, and I got chopped liver, I did chopped salad, and I wanted iceberg lettuce, and I want to speak to the manager now. Just this constant anger, and it's an anger that comes out of loneliness and bitterness and disappointment, all the rest of it. And it's getting stronger. It's one of the things we're going to see in things to come. We're going to see more and more and more women starting to reach that age, and when it really, really hits them that they've been lied to, that, yeah, congratulations, you're going to die rich with your cats alone. More and more of them are going to go insane, and it's going to be one of the first things that we're going to have to deal with. It's going to be one of the many things we're going to have to deal with are these extraordinarily angry, extraordinarily pushy, invasive, nosy, controlling lunatics. Steve Whoop says they have two emotions. Oh, I have two emotions, love and kill. Yeah, fair enough. It's going to be a problem, but the younger women are going to be in much worse shape. They've got half of them are OnlyFans things. They've been told, yeah, you want to do online porn, just start an OnlyFans account. You can get thousands of dollars, and guys will pay to see you naked, or basically, having sex with yourself and you'll make a ton of money, and think of all the power you'll have. Think of all the control. You'll be a girl boss. You'll be in charge of your own destiny. And you'll also have naked pictures of yourself and actions of you having sex online with strangers that will never, ever, 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 ever go away. Ever, ever, ever. Your children will see it. Your grandchildren will see it. Your great-grandchildren will see it. It will never go away. Once it's on the internet, that's it. When women reach the point when they begin to realize that they have made permanent decisions that are irreversible, we are going to be in for, and we're already seeing the leading edge of it. This is why I think I've got a real idea with this things to come thing. We're seeing the leading edge of feminism's destruction of women's psychology. And it's starting to turn into a pandemic of pathology. When feminists started telling women, when feminists went from saying to women, you should have an opportunity to have any job that you qualify for and get paid same as any male, that's just fundamental human rights and common sense. When it went from that to women need a men like a fish needs a bicycle, now you got a lot of fish out there without bicycles, and they're lamenting the fact that they don't have any bicycles. And this is going to be nuts. Conservative women don't have this problem. They just don't. I see conservative women all the time. They're happily married. They're not little wallflowers. They're not these stupid little, they're much better educated, much better informed than progressive women, infinitely happier than progressive women are. Because, look, the reason that something becomes a conservative principle is because it works. It's not like some idea comes out of heaven like a pachinko ball and they go, oh, we're going to call this conservative, we're going to call this liberal. No, it's just a stream of these ideas just constantly come down, and the ones that work we keep, and the ones that don't work do a lot of damage, and then they disappear. And the ones that we keep stay kept because they're essentially eternal, and those things we call conservative values because we want to conserve them. It's just hundreds of millions, if not billions, of individual people, each one of them making thousands and thousands of choices. It's just trial and error with the largest database set in the world. And so we learn that some things work better than other things. We know that it's possible to structure society around one strong male who has 20 wives or 30 or 50. We know that that kind of society is possible, but when we look at that kind of society, what we find is all kinds of pathologies. We find all kinds of real issues. The women are at each other's throat competing for the one guy. They're lonely most of the time. The young males, if there's one male who's got the family, you've got a huge number of not only unmarried but unmarriable men. That is a giant, enormous problem. Constantly got trust issues. You've got the father image who's constantly trying to keep control over the women and put them in sacks so that he knows that they stay in their harems. All the rest of this garbage. And you're basically throwing away 80-90% of your total capacity as a species, because you're losing the unmarriable young men, you're losing all of the women, and this is how you get these honor-based societies like the one that basically creates Hamas. You get just plain hell, but it works within the box it's in. It works, and it's worked forever. You also have an experiment in monogamous relationships. One man, one woman, married for life, with kids, raised by mom and dad. There's a model for that too, and that's the model that produced the moon landing and electricity and penicillin and Novocaine and everything. That's the model that produces the world we live in. That model of family, that conservative, conventional model of family, is infinitely more successful than the tribal lord, with his 50 wives. Infinitely more successful, and everybody in it is happier, except with the possible exception of the one guy who's running the show. And frankly, I never thought that guy was very happy or comfortable either. He's constantly worried about all these things around the edges. So when modern feminism comes in and says, no, we're going to destroy this thing, the birth control pill was the beginning of it. When the birth control pill came along, women no longer having sex no longer made women pregnant. When women are pregnant, they need a support system. And that meant marriage. But the birth control pill meant that women could have as much sex as they want to without having kids. And so the marriage bonds tend to fall apart, and the whole dating business tends to fall apart. And then when it turns out that they do have kids and they're not married, then in comes the government to play the part of daddy. So there's that. And then as far as what the modern guys are doing, what I see modern guys doing, I really don't have much. I really don't blame them. I really don't. I mean, young males have been so demonized for so long, especially young white straight Christian males. They've been so demonized for so long. They just check out. They just plain check out. They go to their universities and they're told how evil they are and how toxic they are and how dangerous they are and how colonial they are, and they just go yes, yes, yes. And then the second that bell rings, they get the hell out of there. They go into a room. They start playing online games with their friends, like Red Dead Redemption 2. In other words, today's Gen Z young men are playing cowboys and Indians just like the boomers did, and they're doing it without somebody bitching at them all the time. That's what a video game is. A video game's a chance for young men in a overly feminized society to act like men without anybody giving them any crap about it. All of these successful video games for young men are combat related. They're all action related, and many of them have storylines that feature a strong father figure like Master Chief and all the rest of it. So that's not a mystery. And so what the guys are basically doing is saying, okay, look, these women are just plain bitches. They're horrible people. They've got nothing going for them. They've never been told no. They've always gotten what they wanted. They're nothing but expectations. They think they own the world. They think they own you. And frankly, we have no desire to hang out with them. It's not like we have to spend time wishing we were with them, because we're either with them or we're not. We're going to either sleep with them on the first date or not. So this whole idea of like having this idealized person, the one that got away in high school, that's gone. And so guys are just saying, okay, fine, that's great. You know what? I've got online porn, I've got online games, and I've got Tinder. That's all I need. And they're right. That's all they need, because men don't have those emotional needs, because men don't have the biology that the women has. So it's a very complicated problem, David, but none of it is hard to figure out. It's just a lot of moving pieces, but all the moving pieces make perfect sense. Perfect sense. And these women don't understand. Well, they're starting to understand, which is why we're getting more of these slutified young girls turning into furious Karens. They're starting to realize that they cannot go back and undo this. Once you've got, a body count of 50, you got a body count of 50, and you can't reduce that number. And the final part of the general equation is, and this is the part that young women don't understand at all. Previous generations of women got this in their bones, but these young women can't. They not only don't have it, they can't understand it. They do not understand why men can be promiscuous and women not. They don't understand it. They think it's unfair. And the reason for this is because there's not a woman who has ever had kids who didn't know who the mother was. Just think about that for a second. There's not a woman ever in the world who's been a mother parent who didn't know who the mother was. You always know who the mother is, because that's where the baby comes from. But you have no way of knowing, at least until recently, who the father is. And when you've got a guy who runs into a woman who slept with 50 or 60 guys, you got to figure that her loyalty value is not very high, and chances are very good that if you marry her, you're going to be raising somebody else's kid, or if you're lucky, it's going to be your kid, but she's got 50 already, so she'll go out and get another 50. It's not worth it anymore. The whole marriage thing is just not worth it for men. It's just a bad deal. They used to get respect. They used to get kindness and consideration. They used to get all kinds of things as a result of giving up this happy hunting ground and staying with one person. Now they don't get anything. They're just as likely to be raising somebody else's kid. And furthermore, if they do get married and then they get divorced, they lose the kid. They don't get contact with the kid. Half of their money goes out the window. It's just nuts. It is so disincentivized now that no one, I mean, what do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen when you find out that 80% of all divorces and 90% of all divorces among college-educated people, 90% of the divorces among college-educated couples are initiated by the women. 90%. What does that tell you if you're a man? Well, it tells you that the women are thinking that you're not worth very much, because if they valued you appropriately, they wouldn't be leaving in such large numbers. 90% of all divorces from college-educated people caused by women, initiated by women, 90%. That's a society that doesn't value men. That's women who think, well, I'm a girl boss. I've got my own company, got my own this. Don't need this man. He doesn't compare very well with number 37, number 92, or number 136 in terms of the sack. And you know, what do you expect? This is what you're going to get. So the reset is coming, and we're going to end up going back to basics, because in the not too distant future, women are going to start to realize why they need men. I've seen a bunch of on the street interviews where basically this guy will go up and ask random women, who do you think's more important to society, women or men? And every single young girl says, women. And then when you sit down and explain to them, well, what do women do? Well, we look pretty and we and then you say 98% of all construction workers, and then 97% of all electricians, 99% of all plumbers, bam, 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 bam. The people that build the things, the people that run the things, the people that keep things going, the people that build your cars and your house and keep the electricity running and the water running and invent the medicine and do all of that stuff, drive the cars, take out the garbage, remove the dead animals. All of that's done by men. All of it. And they just don't see it. That's how messed up they are. So that is a somewhat convoluted answer to an extremely knotty problem, David. And when things are no longer this cushy, then things are going to start being real different. And the thing that's most, I don't know what to say about this. The thing that should wake them up and doesn't is that if you ask the most progressive young women today, the ones that have a body count of 100, who are bad bitch girl bosses, you ask them, do you find these beta male simps, the ones that are down with the feminism and fully woke guys, do you find them attractive? They'll say no, we're not interested in them at all. What kind of guys are you interested in? We like rugged individual guys. We like strong guys. We like guys who are confident and who are we just like guys who are guys. Well, you've spent your entire lives making sure that there's as few of those as possible. And one of the things I feel like, once I've gotten on this things to come rail, is that one of the things I think I can do that is most useful with the rest of my time on this planet is to set up some kind of a academy for young men. I don't know how to do it for young women, but I do think, and I want to kind of mostly do this for the Major Mace Mattingly thing. I think there's a lot of young men out there who are just looking for answers. They just want to hear it. They know something's wrong, and they know they've been constantly put down. They just need to hear it. Just things. I've mentioned to a few young men I've met who've kind of got this hangdog kind of thing, because it's all about the girl superheroes, female Thors that weigh less than the hammer, and all these little, Scarlett Johanssons beating the crap out of 250-pound guys. That's all they see. That's all they see ever. And so men are feeling kind of useless, because the fantasy world of entertainment is run by these psycho bitches and gay or beta male simps. So the idea of a woman going out to fight is something that should offend your sensibilities if you're a man. Anytime you see a woman throw a punch in a movie, that should offend you if you're a male. Should offend you. And the reason it should offend you is because she shouldn't be having to do that. That's your job. So They know there's something wrong, and they know what they want to be. They've just been told that they can't be those things. And once they're exposed to it, they wake up. And when you tell them things like this, when you tell young men things like the young women too, but the people who really need to hear it are young men. When you say to a young man to say, listen, don't take my word for it, you can look it up. Fastest time ever run by a woman, the fastest woman has ever run was Flojo in 84 Olympics or 80, whatever Olympics it was. Flojo set the all-time record for women in the 100-yard or the 100-meter dash. All-time record. Go and look at what that number is. Take that number, the fastest time a woman's ever run the 100 meters, and you will find that every single high school in America has males that are 15, 16 years old that can run faster than that. Every single one of them. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions probably. Well, certainly, no question about it. There's probably millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of men that run faster than the fastest woman ever. Just tell them that one little thing. Just tell them that. And they like, what? Yeah, man. Yeah. And do the same thing for weights, you know? And do the same thing for, look at Nobel Prize winners. It's not that there aren't smart women. It's not that there aren't brilliant women. I'm just saying in a world that has so demonized boys, it's about time boys realize that, no, you guys, dudes, we're the freaking, you know, we're the bomb. We get to do all this cool stuff. And you do get to do all that cool stuff, and the price is you have to behave yourself, and you have to take care of these people who can't do this cool stuff. So there you go, dude. But of all the things I see out there, I think the thing that's most disturbing and most inconceivable to me is how feminism has managed to turn women into humans that hate children and babies. Hate them. I didn't think that was possible. I understand that when you really get down to it, the stuff you see on YouTube is always the most dramatic. It's always the most, you know, always the worst case scenario. I get this. There's an enormous sampling error out there, that there are millions, hundreds of millions of women out there that are just as maternal as anybody else. But there is an entire subset, entire cohort of modern women that despise the idea of children, that basically aborting a baby is their gold medal. You know, it's their moon landing. I have heard trans people say, I hope that one day there will be men who are pretending to be women saying, I hope that they'll be able to be the ability to transplant a uterus not because I want to have a baby, but because I want to have an abortion. I've heard that verbatim out of somebody's mouth. That is the most mentally ill thing I've ever heard anybody say, ever. And you know, these people end up in the White House and sit down with the president and talk about how they're the best among us. Okay. Reality is not on their side. I don't know what politics is going to happen, but I know reality is on our side. And the thing about the fourth turning is reality will not be denied. So moving on. Hey, look, it's Eric Blake. The man with the hat is in the office tonight. Come on in if you're ready to win. I usually gloss over those, but I realize Eric put so much work into them, it's really not fair. And by the way, it's another important point. Mobile Modal says it's a religious rite of passage. He's talking about the thing for feminism. One thing that we are dreadfully missing in this society, dreadfully missing, is a male rite of passage ceremony. We need one of those so badly. It's unbelievable how much we need one of those. And I don't know exactly what it is, but this idea that you are a boy until you accomplish these certain things in the presence of other men, and you are not one of them until you do this thing. It's not a question of turning 18 years old. It's like you have to be this and do this in order to be considered a man by the men in your tribe. That is so important. The closest I ever came was when I had the naming ceremony with those Air Force guys, and I got my tactical call sign from real fighter pilots, because I always wanted to be a real fighter pilot, and they put me through living hell for all of 2 hours, which in the end was just a blast. But I graduated, you know. I got the name, and then I got all the handshakes and all the rest of it. That's as close as I've come, and it changed my life. CP Tome says Eagle Scout here. Eagle Scouts, great example. But even Eagle Scouts, guys, an Eagle Scout, you have my undying respect, and the best thing I've ever heard about Neil Armstrong was that he wrote a letter to, because he was an Eagle Scout, wrote a letter to every single Eagle Scout that ever became an Eagle Scout while he was alive after he landed on the moon. That's a great guy. But the problem with Eagle Scouts is that ceremony means something to people that understand what Boy Scouts are and what it takes to be an Eagle Scout. I'm talking about something that all of society can see. This used to be something that all of society could see, and you would mark somebody with ritual scars or brands or all the rest of it. When I was in school, I don't know if it's still true, I suspect it probably is, completely unique to black fraternities at the University of Florida in 1982, 79 to 82. Completely unique to black fraternities there was that these guys, when they became, when they got pledged into the fraternity, they would brand themselves. And I mean brand themselves with a red-hot branding iron. And I mean big letters, like right there, just like in, they do that on, that's on the tip of my tongue, I'm not going to look. Yellowstone. That's important because it gives young men not only something to strive for, it also gives them a target, right? It's not just a goal, it's also a target. What am I supposed to be, What am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? Without an initiation ceremony for young men don't have an answer to that. Almost all initiation ceremonies for men have to do with overcoming hardship and pain. Almost all of them. That's a great point too, by the way. Battle Smurf says it used to be you got your driver's license. Yeah, hands up if you got your driver's license on the morning of your 16th birthday. They don't drive anymore. They're just not interested in it. That's another thing I can't understand. The idea that it's because of simulators. It's because of simulators. It's because of computer games. But for me, growing up, the idea of anything that moved under its own power was irresistible. Go-karts, mini bikes, the little boat things, bumper cars, great example. If I could steer it and it would move, I was all about it. I couldn't get away from it. First time I rode a go-kart, I just thought, this is as good as life is ever going to get for me. Ever. This is it. This is the best thing I've ever done. This is the most fun I ever had. That seems to be going. Now you can come home and play go-kart simulator, which is not the same, by the way. So anyway, moving on. Back to Eric's question. So, what are your thoughts on RFK Jr. announcing that he's running as an independent? There are several pundits concerned that he might be Ross Perot 2.0 and take votes away from Trump. However, Tim Pool and Michael Knowles have noted that it's far more likely he'll be a spoiler for Biden, where a lot of Democrat-leaning voters will happily vote for Bobby Jr. instead of holding their nose for the demented dodo bird. I'm leaning towards the latter and suspect Trump might reward him for ensuring his victory, maybe even giving him a cabinet position, HHS secretary perhaps. What say you? I don't know how many non-Trump supporting Republicans are, but it seems to me that even if you either don't support Donald Trump and you can't stand him, the country is going to hell so fast that when he's the nominee, because he will be unless something happens, you got to pull the trigger for Trump instead of Biden or somebody else. So I completely agree with Knowles and Poole. I think that the people who are embarrassed for their party now, there's some Republicans who are embarrassed by Trump. Most of us are fully aware of what Trump is, and yeah, we're embarrassed by some of the things Trump does. But unlike the Democrats, we have come to terms with it. There's a lot of things I wish were different about Donald Trump, a lot of things. But the one thing that seems to be consistently true about Donald Trump is he's not part of that club, and he seems to care about the country, and his actions as president have spoken that way. Good enough for me. So I think by far there are more disenchanted Democrats out there. There are more Democrats who have daughters who are in sports. There are more Democrats who who are paying crazy taxes. There are more Democrats living in urban areas that are becoming unlivable. I think there are more and more Democrats that are upset with being Democrats than there are Republicans upset about being Republicans. And that means if you have somebody who's going to pull those kind of votes away, I don't see how it could possibly say that if RFK Jr. runs independently, he's going to get more Trump voters than Democrats. I think the ratio might be 10-1, if that. I think he's much more likely to pull Democrats. But, I mean, his name is Kennedy, for God's sake. That's an automatic 20% of the Democratic vote right there. Just that. Just the name. Boom. Kennedy, I'm voting for him. So, yeah, I think he's a much bigger threat to the Democrats, and I hope he runs. As far as rewarding him goes, my main reasons for liking him are his positions on the whole vaccine and deep state, which I think is our number one problem, not the vaccine, the deep state. He's been outspoken critic of this and not in a shy way. There are a lot of negatives to this guy, a lot of negatives, and I'm not saying he's perfect, and I'm not saying I would rather have him than anybody else, but I am saying I'd take him over anybody else in the Democratic field right now, I think, only because the competition is so frickin' unbearable and indigestible for us. All right, here we go. Moving down. Steve Young, joking. Okay, it's good to know right at the beginning. Capital letters, 2 asterisks on either side. Joking. Post-incident analysis of the recent F-35 fighter aircraft crash has determined that a software glitch prevented the pilot from turning off the audio of a sensor monitoring the ABC television show The View. I've heard this story too from top intel people. And after enduring 26 grueling minutes of the broadcast, the pilot was forced to eject. The Board of Inquiry finds the pilot is not at fault in this incident and recommends that he be returned to flight status immediately. Yes, well, that's not the kind of information you want to leak out to our enemies, because, frankly, we have for many years now, and I've seen this myself personally when I visited the torture chambers down in Guantanamo Bay. We've been playing The View on the jihadis, they just do nothing but play these women squawking for 24 hours a day. And it keeps them awake, but they don't understand English, and they certainly don't understand them. So you might as well just use a generator making noise or a jet engine or something. It's just noise for them. But what we don't want out, and the reason that this has been covered up so carefully, is we don't want our enemies realizing the power that that forcing young, straight, competent men to listen to The View has in terms of robbing their will to fight and escape. It's just a matter of time. So the reason they covered that up so much, Steve, is because, frankly, if one of our pilots get captured, they don't want the U.S. government and the Air Force especially, Marines, they don't want the bad guys to know just how quickly that can break a man. Mr. Super Chat from Monk in Training. Orthodox Jews have a bar mitzvah. See, perfect example. Bar mitzvah, I don't know why I didn't think of that more earlier. It's a perfect example. But that's more of a ceremony that explains manhood than the USMC crucible males must know manhood is a responsibility. But a bar mitzvah is a great example. That's the perfect example. That is something that everybody in the community sees, and at that point you are a man. It's not a rite of passage in the same way that it used to be, or we would consider it to be. I know there's one tribe out there that wears these gloves that have inward pointing barbs, and there's another tribe that has to put their hand in this thing of fire ants, any one bite of which is just excruciating, and they have to take 50 of these things, that kind of thing. It would just be nice to get your man card. It'd be nice if you got if the man card had to be issued and you didn't just get one because you happen to be a male. And men need this, and they really need it badly, and they know that they're missing something, and this is one of the many things they're missing. So, I might have to start the Junior Space Cadet Academy or something like that. Charles Tomes, from an undisclosed location in flyover country where the budget is balanced by state law and handouts consist of leftover fried Democrat on a stick from the state fair that not even the pigs will eat. Mr. Tomes, you, sir, are developing into quite a writer. Darth Chuck the Merciless retorts. That was the preamble. After the 2 minutes of clarity of thought last Sunday, Sniff went on a whirlwind tour of the Middle East where not one, not two, but three heads of state said, nah, Don't need you to see this. Don't need to see you this time. And returned with his own hat in hand to ask Congress for a few $100 billion in foreign aid so he can try to divert a few more tens of millions into his crime syndicate. You know, it's funny. I never really put those two things together. I know that's probably enough to lose half my membership base. I never see. It's because I'm an idealist. You know, I actually, it just never occurred to me that people could be that venal, that push for all of that aid to Ukraine was just basically kickback money. I just didn't occur to me. But it's occurred to me now, and once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. Only to find that the Republicans, in their fit of self-destructive pique, fired their own leader and refused to choose a new speaker, apparently in a 4D chess move so brilliant, not even the Democrats understand the sophistication. Thus, the question arises, are we drinking screwdrivers or martinis as we watch the nightly news to see if Aegis can shoot down the missiles flying tonight? I stated in the Things to Come thing, it's another thing that deserves its entire own segment. I cannot envision a nuclear war in the way that I grew up, not the way that I grew up imagining nuclear war. Full-scale thermonuclear warfare, toe-to-toe with the Ruskies, everything we got, 25,000 warheads each, megaton explosions, multiple megaton explosions over every American city, base, installation, university. I just don't see it happening. I just don't. I cannot imagine a world where the stakes would be higher than they were during the Cold War, where the Soviets had direct orders to open fire and risk what was to them was the certainty of being shot if they were wrong, and their families being sent to the Gulag. And it's not just those two individuals. When Ronald Reagan apparently said, I haven't been able to source this completely, but apparently Ronald Reagan once said in private many years after he left office that if there had been a full-scale nuclear attack, he would not have retaliated because there's no point in killing the other half of the human race, something like that. So when I say I don't think a nuclear war is possible, I'm talking about, there's a term that was used during the end of the Cold War, and I think it was called the knee, and it was a chart. It was a chart that our Defense Department put together, and it was an analysis of how much damage would the United States have to take in order to become a non-functioning country. In other words, if you were to pop a big old nuke over Los Angeles, things actually may run better in the country. It may be an improvement. Everything, test scores and all that may go up. So how much damage, how many nuclear weapons would it take to make the United States essentially no longer function as a unit? And I think it was called the knee because it had something to do with the shape of the chart. So, for example, if Kim Jong-un were to launch a nuclear attack if he were to launch an atomic attack rather than a thermonuclear attack on Los Angeles, this would be a very large explosion that would kill probably 1 million people, maybe a little bit more. If an atomic bomb went off in downtown Los Angeles, I would hear it from where I live. I don't believe I could see it. And I don't think I'd see it until the mushroom cloud was way up over the horizon. 1 million people might die, maybe less. And that would be a disaster area. And needless to say, it would be the greatest single act of mass murder in human history and all the rest of it. But it wouldn't destroy the United States. That would just bring in, that is when we would start mobilizing all kinds of rescue units. So it's not 1 bomb, and it's not 10 bombs, and it's not 30 bombs. I want to say the number, the need that they calculated was something like 100 nuclear and thermonuclear weapons impacting the United States in key places, was somewhere, I think, around 100. That under 100, in general terms, closer to 100 you get, the harder it gets. But somewhere 100 or less, you've still got a functioning society that is doing massive damage repair. But beyond a certain number, it's just, that's it. There's nobody to call. There's no law. There's no government, no chaos or anything. I just don't see it happening. I'm not saying that there won't be nuclear weapons used. I'm not even saying that it's inconceivable that nuclear weapons will be deployed against the United States, but a full-scale nuclear attack, enough to bend the knee, to cross that point where there's no longer a functioning society, I just don't see it under any circumstances. So I'm not afraid of World War III in the sense that I spent virtually my entire life afraid of World War III. I just don't believe there's any. I know there are people that are perfectly willing to die for it. I'm not saying that there's not people who would bear the consequences of it. Hamas is a great example. If Hamas had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Tel Aviv or New York or both. But Hamas or any other terrorist organization is conceivable they could get a hold of a nuclear weapon, but they couldn't get a hold of 100 of them and deliver them. So I'm talking about a destroy the country World War III, end of the world World War III. I just don't see that as a possibility anymore. I just don't. Now, this is one of the very few things that I don't want to be wrong about. Most everything I think about, I want to be wrong about. But this one, I'd like to be right about, and I believe I am. So that gets us back to this question of, aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, aid to all this other stuff. Right now we've got, the Ukraine war is the biggest conventional war certainly since Vietnam. And it is the largest conventional war in Europe since World War II. Russian casualties now killed by virtually every reliable source. I saw a pretty good documentary that the BBC put out on how do you determine how many people were actually killed, soldiers killed. And they went into all the different variables. Here's what they report themselves. Here's propaganda. Here's what social media is telling. Here's what a statistical analysis says. Blah, 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 blah. They did a lot of homework on that. And they are saying that as near as they can see, the floor, the minimum, is 60,000, in the neighborhood of 60,000 Russians killed. That's all of Vietnam. That's 11 years of Vietnam in a year and a half. So this is a big, big war. But compared to World War II, it's not even a. I mean, what would you compare it to? I mean, I don't even think the casualties of like the second German offensive. I think those casualties in the second German offensive, they go in there and then they have to endure the winter, and then beginning of next spring Hitler pushes again. I think the numbers killed in that second offensive are order of magnitude higher than what they are now in the Ukraine war. That's one offensive on one front of a world war that lasted for 6 years. So I don't really see that as a problem. I'm not worried about what missiles are flying tonight. I just as I was turning on the camera, I caught out of my eye something that said that U.S. destroyers had shot down some missiles or rockets incoming to Israel. I wish the press would be a little more accurate and precise with their terms, by the way. I'm not aware that Hamas has any missiles. I'm pretty sure they've just got rockets. And as far as I'm concerned, and generally speaking, the difference is that a rocket is not guided and a missile is. I don't believe Hamas has any guided missiles, short-range, medium-range guided missiles. I think they're just taking water pipes, filling them full of gunpowder, and just launching them. But if it turns out that that's true, that the U.S. Navy has shot down a couple of rockets that were headed for Israel, and we shot them down in mid-flight, that not only makes me personally happy, it also, I just look at that as a high-level drill. If the story is true, I just saw it. I'm not claiming it's true. I haven't even seen anything about the story. I just saw the headline. But let's just say that it's true. Not only am I happy that these murderers didn't land that rocket on Israel, I'm also happy to know that our Standard missiles work the way they're advertised to work. And that our ability to shoot things down are not limited to hey, we're going to have a drill in 45 minutes. Okay, the drill's going to start in 5 minutes. Everybody in position. Okay, 30 seconds, 10, 9, 8. that shows you that the missile can do the job under laboratory circumstances. But if you're sitting there on board a Arleigh Burke class destroyer, which it almost certainly was, I can't imagine how it could have been anything else, and you're just looking at the radar and you see targets coming up out of Gaza, and they're heading up on a relatively low trajectory compared to intercontinental ballistic missiles, and you see these launches on your radar, Aegis system picks it up, gets the target, it's in range of your standard anti-aircraft. Standard is the name of the missile. That's very misleading. The actual name of the missile is the Standard missile. When you say Standard missile, you want to say, oh, it's a Standard missile. No, it's the actual name of it, a standard, like a flag. So you're sitting out there, and it was the Carney. Awesome. Yeah. So if it turns out that what actually happened was, if we've got destroyers in range there, we got naval assets in range, they're obviously on high alert. They know there's something going on. But if there's a skipper there and he's commanding a Aegis class destroyer, which I've been on, and is one of the most amazing warships in history, it's a freaking phenomenal platform. And he's just sitting there with his cup of coffee, just looking for things. All of a sudden, radar says, "Hey, we have a launch here," and there's not a lot of flight time. Doesn't have to go over the pole, and his fire control officer says, "We have a good firing solution." The captain says, "Get it." Off goes the Standard missile, blows it out of the sky. That's a real test of the vertical launch system. That's a real test of defensive capabilities. Unexpected. You don't know what angle it's coming from. You don't know what bearing it's heading on. You don't have a great idea where it's going. You got a decent idea where it's going. And most importantly, it's not coming to you. It's not closing the distance. You're going out, reaching out and touching it. I think it's great. I actually kind of think, although we're burning through weapons faster than I would like, I really think we ought to put, I don't know, when I start playing defense secretary, I start getting creative. But I think it would be cool to put 10 of our least experienced crews, 5 inexperienced crews and 5 veteran crews, and just run them in a track off the coast of Israel. Just 10 of them, just in a track, and whichever ones are closest to the coast, those guys are the ones on active duty, and you let the rookies try and make the shot, and if it turns out they don't get that missile off within 5 seconds or whatever, then the experienced guys take over. I say we just consider the whole thing a giant exercise and shoot every single one of those goddamn things out of the sky. I think that would be a lovely, lovely message to send to our friends and enemies. If you got any funny ideas about lobbing missiles our way across, the Pacific, you can rest pretty assured that it's not going to get there. I guess that's about it, Mr. Tomes. It is not lost on me that the President of the United States is a joke. It's not lost on me that Hamas made this attack when they knew the President of the United States was a joke, and so did Vladimir Putin. It's so important to be clear about this. Joe Biden did not cause those wars, but Joe Biden's presence allowed them. I believe that from the bottom of my heart, based on all the history I've ever read. How are we doing on time here? 1:37. I think I'm going to do the last of these questions here, and then I'm going to call it a night, gang. I got other things that I need to do as well, as always. And we will get through at least all the questions on the temporary Bill Whittle site, and with any luck, we'll have the permanent one up by next Thursday. I was hoping to have this one by this Thursday, but that's life, and I'm happy with what we get. Oh, and one more thing. Somebody mentioned Xi and China. The single greatest potential trigger to nuclear war that I was aware of prior to the Ukraine invasion was that China decides to make a serious play against Taiwan. Looking at the cards and everything, I never thought they had much of a chance, but you never know what the Chinese think. They think in their own little bubbles, just like Putin does. So I always thought the most likely tripwire for deployment of nuclear weapons would be China, full-scale invasion of Taiwan, trying to get Taiwan back. And I think that after what the world has seen in Ukraine, I think China has taken that option off the table. Because I think China thought all they have to do is get their tanks ashore, essentially. If they can get their tanks ashore, if they can cross the Taiwan Strait and get their tanks ashore, then they're going to win. And what Ukraine has shown us is that one guy with a javelin and a reloader is worth a platoon of tanks. And if you think Ukraine has developed some weaponry, Taiwan has been stockpiling top-of-the-line stuff for 20 years now. If China decided to make that play, I think the U.S. Navy, well, if we had an actual president, if I was president, if Donald Trump was president, if China launched that attack on Taiwan, we'd say Taiwan is an ally of the United States. Any attack on them we consider an attack on us. And then when those ships clear Chinese international waters, then all of their transports go away. I don't think one of them would make it to shore if the U.S. Navy decided to stop them. I don't think that the Chinese Navy would have a great deal of success against our Navy. And even if they got something ashore, I think the Taiwanese defense forces would take them out quickly. But before Ukraine, that was a theoretical. Since Ukraine, the Chinese leadership has seen what happens to Soviet-made equipment when they face Western weapons. And it's not just the tanks. Soviet, what is it, the Chinese, is it the J-16? It's not the J-20. They're so-called stealth fighter, but they're essentially the mainstay of the Chinese Air Force is the SU-27 flanker, redesigned, re-engineered, reverse-engineered. And the flanker is a fairly capable platform, but it's certainly no match for a F-22, and it's no match for an F-35 either. And it's rapidly showing itself to be no match for an F-16. However, we have one glaring weakness right now in our military. It's being taken care of slowly, but it's not happening fast enough for me, and that is that we have allowed ourselves to slip badly in terms of the capabilities of our air-to-air missiles. We were up until recently using the AMRAAM-C, which in the 90s was the best missile ever. But now, both the Russians and the Chinese have missiles with twice or three times that range, hypersonic Mach 5 missiles. The AMRAAM Delta version has the same range as those missiles. It's out to about 8,000 miles. That's a big, big difference. But they still have the hypersonic missiles. We have the AIM-260 under development and getting ready to deploy. And when we deploy those things, then they're at 120, 130-mile range, two-stage air-to-air missile that's hypersonic missile. We need to get those AIM-260s on frontline aircraft, and we need to do it right now. And I would put it on the Eagles and the Falcons and the Hornets, because the F-22s can get close enough to shoot with the Deltas or the Charlies, and, bye-bye. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not as the result of the last crisis, we got so powerful and so determined that we, at the end of the last crisis in 1945, determined that we were never going to suffer that fate again. And so we spent the intervening 80 years spending billions of dollars every year to make sure that we are never, ever attacked by fleets of bombers or battleships or anything of that nature. I think any kind of conventional attack on the U.S. in terms of a fleet or air force is just plain off the table. And I think I can include a nuclear missile attack in that too, even a sizable one. So it's going to come from somewhere else. And it's beginning to look like me, it's going to come from internally. Just in terms of, well, if you got a president who's going to take 10% from whoever in order to swing U.S. influence, then it is coming from internally, isn't it? Okay, so last question for the night from Eric Blake again. So, Bill, the whole House Speaker debacle had me thinking about the funny oddity of American public opinion. The U.S. Congress constantly has an insanely low approval rating, House and Senate alike, yet incumbents constantly get reelected. Of course, it's almost certainly an ego thing for the voters of each district to say, right? Yeah, most congressmen are stupid, but my representative or senator is great, and so the cycle continues. The question is, how does one fix this, or is low approval Congress just a universal constant? Well, politicians have been despised throughout history, Erica, not just American society, just universally throughout history. Politicians have always been understood to be the lowest form of people because they're the kind of people who are willing to say whatever they need to say to get elected, which means they have no personal integrity and lots of power. That's why they're in politics in the first place. I have to tell you, as time goes on, I think more along these new lines. I'm beginning to think of things like Congress as temporarily irrelevant. I think the rot is so deep that I really don't much care anymore. And I feel the same way about the budget. Once you got to, certainly once you got to $20 trillion, became clear to me there's no way this is ever going to be repaid. It's impossible. Now it's at 35 or 40. So when they say we're going to spend another $8 billion on this, I no longer get the vapors about it. I just realize it's just a number. They'll print it. We're going to continue to see the inflation and all the rest of it. And one day these chickens are going to come home, and there's nothing I can do about that. We haven't had a I think I'll just say this. It's not popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think Donald Trump was a good president, but I don't think Donald Trump was a good leader. Reagan had the ability to not only get elected, nearly ran the table in '84, but Reagan also was stating Republican principles so plainly, and the results were so obvious that all the Republicans benefited from it. Reagan was a Republican. Trump is a MAGA guy, and I'm fine with that because I think MAGA Republicans are essentially just grassroots conservatives. But in terms of effectiveness, in terms of across-the-board effectiveness, in terms of making a tipping point for society, I don't think he's tremendously good. In fact, I think he could be more of a liability than an asset. It doesn't mean I don't think he should be elected. I thought his first term was extraordinary, and if he is reelected, and frankly, I think if I could count on the election being fair, I think there'd be no question he'd be overwhelmingly elected. Then I think his second term will begin with the things that he spent the last 4 years being very, very, very sore about. I don't think he's going to go into drain the swamp now. I think if Trump is reelected, he's going in there to nuke the swamp. That's what I think. In fact, that'd be a good expression. Nuke the swamp. That's it. No more draining the swamp. No more. We got to get all this sludge. No, just flatten it out. Sea of glass. Start all over. After what has happened to him in terms of the way the Justice Department has been weaponized against him and every other conservative in the country, then I think that's something I'd like to see. By the way, it's so easy sometimes to really think. Some solutions are so simple if you understand who you're dealing with. So, with a handful of exceptions, politicians are people who want money and power. They know they can get the money, but they'd have to work very, very hard for it, and most of them are either too lazy or too stupid or both to do that. But what they really want is the power. They want the power to tell people what to do, to write laws and so on. And ultimately, think about this, because it's true. If you become a senator or even a congressman, emotionally, you've been given an unlimited credit card. You can buy whatever you want to. It doesn't matter. You want to buy a golden house this week and trade it in for a platinum house on Tuesday, you can make that happen. You have an unlimited credit card. There is no credit limit, and you do not have to pay the bills. It is just a card, and whatever you want to buy, you can buy it, and that's the end of it. That you never see it again. We, on the other hand, are the people that have to pay off that card. We don't get the benefits of the card. We just have to pay the bills. And those kind of people are actually pretty simple people. We just don't understand them. And what I'm saying about simple solutions is, for example, I would think you would see a remarkable change in the quality of our Congress if we were to raise the salary of the congressman to $1 million a year, and let's say $5 million for a senator. That seems like a lot of money, but it's peanuts compared to what we spend. However, that salary would be adjusted based upon the degree of deficit or surplus that the government runs that year. In other words, if you would make $1 million that year and the government is running a 20% deficit, then you are only making $800,000 that year. If, on the other hand, you're saving money, you make more than $1 million that year. If you raise the price of it, you would get more serious people, and the cheats and lowlifes that you get would be incentivized in the opposite direction. Now there would be a benefit for good behavior, for financial. They would economically benefit from wise economic policies, because they would take home a bigger paycheck if we stopped having deficits, and an even bigger paycheck if we ran surpluses. And since they're so simple, and since their motivations are so basic and so venal, this is a bargain. This is a bargain. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. We're not talking about $500 million, and we're spending billions and trillions of dollars. Give them a lot of money, raise the quality, generally speaking, of people that want to get into politics, and then tie their salaries directly to the amount of directly to what is happening with the federal budget for that year. You're running a surplus, you're running a deficit. If you're running, a 50% deficit, then you're getting half pay. I think something like that would happen. And Steve Whoop says, no, Bill, we kick them out if they can't pass a budget. Precisely right, Steve. If they do not pass a budget, then they don't get paid anything. That's your job. That's a big part of your job. If you guys don't pass a budget because none of you want to take responsibility, then you don't get paid anything. Anything. I guarantee you that would have a remarkable effect, and it's something that's so simple. It's a one piece of legislation. It's one line of legislation. You subsidize, whatever you subsidize, you get more of. And that's pretty much how life works. Okay, Gangaroos, I know it's a relatively short show. It's looking like an hour, 51 minutes, but I'm going to pack this baby up here, and that's it. So, all these other things that are in process are still in process. They're moving along slowly because they're all moving along. But the first thing I need to do is I really do need to get this Frank Luke script in. I am very happy with what the proto website is looking like so far. What will make me very happy is if things like forum posts and everything else come along, and that during the beta test segment, people can just simply go to that link and just be logged in. That's my goal. So that's actually what's going to happen first. Is the website is the first priority. We had a number of people signed up after that last appeal as members, and their payment gets processed by a company that we don't even see. It's kind of transparent. It happens on what looks like one of our web pages. Technically, it is one of our web pages, but we don't. BillWhittle.com never sees any of the financial information that you have, and we don't directly receive any of the money. It all goes to an online bank, in this case called Recurly. They process the financial. They send the information back to BillWhittle.com. That's supposed to put your name on the BillWhittle.com registration rolls, so that once you pay Recurly, you immediately should be able to go to BillWhittle.com, and our software should get your name and your username, your address. We should get your username, your password, which we don't see, and should just immediately open the gates of the membership thing. So it wasn't doing that, and that was my first number one bullet point on the list of things that I needed for this when this person took the job. So hopefully that's going to be working. There's going to be I think this is going to do a lot for our membership and therefore our revenues. I think when the story mechanic comes out for the first time ever, there's going to be, I think, really top quality content that only the members see. And I'll probably include Patreon and things like that in there as well. Channel subscribers. It'll be a real business model like Daily Wire. We'd still get the trifectas, obviously. Trifectas. The right angles will still go out for free. Major Mason Mattingly will be for free. But most of the stuff that we do with these interviews will be members only, and I think that'll get us some more members. We'll see. We're going to put a lot of stuff out as teases and as incentives and little bites and stuff, but the real meat of it's going to be for members only, and I think it's going to really make a big difference. So we will see. Anyway, that's for us to figure out. Usually I say goodnight to the YouTube people second, but tonight I'm going to say goodnight to them first. So I'm about to cut the stream on you guys, so you're going to be left hanging in the air. Sorry about that. To record the Twitch stream, so hate to just cut the phone here like this. I don't have to. That's right. I don't have to. I can go to the screen and then let's do that.